These Ipswich Town players are defying the odds.
Welcome back to TWTV, where you join me, Jim Cooper, again, with former player Alan Lee, who's back to join us on another show to give us a view back of the slightly disappointing game where we've lost 2-0 at home to Everton. Alan, welcome back again. Hospitality again today, I believe?
Yes, I was meeting sponsors and catching up with old friends in there, and admiring all the new work and the new lounges.
Yeah,
and
I think you were in the new, I think it's the level head. What are they like inside? Is it?
Oh, one is just like a kind of a nut-market bar.
Oh, great.
And a very relaxed feeling and lovely seats in front. And then one's a little bit more formal, a little bit more food.
Yeah.
But they've done a fantastic job. Everything looks really smart.
Fantastic to hear. So let's get into it. Before we actually talk about the game, we'll get your views as an ex-player of the game, Alan. The 15-minute delay, I think it was caused by some turnstile issues. As a player, you know, you're ready to go, and then you suddenly get kicked back by 50 minutes. I noticed Everton came out to train for some of that time. How would it affect, would it make any difference to you? What's your thoughts on that?
It's funny. Sometimes it can help you. I mean, it was every so often you'd be very late to a game, and you'd arrive and you'd have no warm up. And it's funny, every time that happened to a team I was involved in, we generally won. Right. Because our mind wasn't on the task ahead. It was probably a bit more relaxed. We're kind of rushing through things, and there's something about that maybe switches off those you know, your worries or your concerns. Yeah. So it never really bothered me that much. It happens every so often. Yeah. I guess different people have different ways of preparing. Yeah. You know, for games.
Well, let's get into the game and give you, as an ex-player, your overview of the game. Just, it's obviously a disappointing performance, but talk us through it. Was it an Everton quality, or was it Ipswich maybe's press was behind? Talk us through your overview of the game.
Listen, ultimately, I think it's down to the players. I wasn't watching that game thinking there's a strategic decision here that McKenna needs to make to change it. I felt that us missing the chance early on when both teams are kind of feeling each other out, Clark's chance was, that was a big sucker punch for us. Yeah. They go down, they score not long afterwards. I think probably what we're looking at here is, Everton. These teams have spent a lot of time in the Premier League. Have some very good players. Yeah. I was very impressed with Decore in the middle. I felt he probably won the battle in the midfield. I felt like Delap was strong, worked hard, but probably didn't have much, just fed off scraps, really.
Yeah, I mean, just coming back to a few things there. The Clark chance, I think, you're an ex-striker. Do you think he had too much time? Because there was a long time for his setup. It was a big goal in front of him. Would that have put you off in some ways, having that amount of time?
Well, it's a bouncy, but it wasn't perfect for him. But those chances rarely are. He's not a centre forward. I'm not sure he's renowned for his finishing. Yeah. He's a new player here, still looking to prove himself. He's a young player. When I was in that position, when I was on the pitch, I was nervous about things. Yeah. If I had time and a chance, I was probably more nervous than if I was throwing myself at something. Yeah. So I understand it with the pressures and everything going on, and him needing to prove himself, that he probably wasn't as relaxed. And I felt there was one or two other times where I think a confident Jack Clark would have taken the shot first time. Yeah. But he didn't. He took a touch, and then the chance went. You don't get that time in the Premier League. Yeah. But I understand why it's happening. If he was an experienced centre forward, I'd be more concerned. Yeah. But he's a young lad, and I think he'll grow and he'll get more confident as games go by.
Yeah. And coming back into the game itself, obviously I think we were weaker in the first half. Was that an energy issue from Ipswich, or was it again a level issue, would you say?
Sometimes in football you go out there and you have a bunch of players. Now you're hoping that 8, 9 of your players on a good day are at their best.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that today. And I think there was times I was looking at it going, right, probably needs to make some changes, but there's probably 4 or 5 that I think aren't at their normal level.
Yeah.
Now, you don't expect everyone to be at their level the whole time, but usually we're so used to watching Ipswich and thinking, well, I don't know who's going to bring them off because they were playing so well.
Yeah.
It was different today. There was a few, 2 or 3 too many of having an off day. Ultimately, they were too strong for us.
Yeah.
They had some good players.
And just to close out, I think second half we did start to get more joy. We actually had the higher possession in the game. Did you feel we were going to score? Was there a lack of numbers in the box? We had some chances carved out. There was the Taylor shot on the ground. Obviously, Delap had the shot over the bar. Did you feel we were going to score, or were Everton just too rigid?
Watching the game, I think you get a feling for it as but not just as a professional, but the people around me. So we didn't feel like we were going to score.
Yeah.
I'd say we probably had more attempts on the goal, but you'll probably see that they weren't as effective as theirs, and they probably should have had 1 or 2 more.
Yeah.
I think what happens, that you get a 2-0 lead away from home. Everton have a solid team, some good players, good management. They sit back. It's really, really hard to break that down. Yeah, really hard.
That was it. They got Royal Rigid to Sean Dyche's side. They were quite. So just to finish, I think. We were talking beforehand, weren't we, Alan? This is an Everton team that have had multiple transfer windows. The quality of the squad, it's going to, we've had a big transfer window, but we're still so far behind.
We've had a big transfer window, but there's a reason. Like, Everton have been in and out of the news for years for overspending, ultimately, and losing money.
Yeah.
So they have spent hundreds of millions over 9-10 years, call it. And funny enough, they're going to end up with some good players at the end of that.
Yeah.
I get that, but I think what we should be wary of, we kind of, I know certainly I have this feeling, maybe we get 3 points today, but you go out there, you look at Doucouré, McNeil, they had some really good players out there, and they don't just hoof it.
Yeah.
They mix it up. They have some experience, and that's probably the tale of playing in the Premier League.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thanks very much, Alan, for joining us and giving us those insights as an ex-player. I think, we saw the step up in level today.
Yeah.
Let's hope McKenna can regroup and we go again. Thanks very much for your time.
Very
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to another TWTV, where you join me and Kallum, Brisset and Phil Ham, staff writers from TWTD, for another video verdict on an Ipswich Town game. We're outside the back of Portman Road today. It's getting a lot darker, isn't it, boys? And a lot colder, it seems. And probably our moods are also getting a bit dark after that game, where we've just witnessed Ipswich Town 0, Everton 2, and let's get straight into it. We obviously were disappointed after the West Ham game, Phil. Bit of a continuation of that. Do you want to give us an overview of the game and kind of what you wrote up in your match report, please?
Yeah, well, I kind of, much of what you said, really. We've talked about the West Ham game and how there were too many mistakes, and opposition goals came from mistakes, and again it was much the same thing, but mistakes all over the pitch throughout, really. I think it was probably one of the most disjointed performances we've had since Kieran McKenna's been at the club, really. And again, I think this is a theme that we've got used to in the Premier League, is that when we make a mistake, opposition sides are clinical and they make the most of it. Certainly the first goal today, that was the case, and then the second goal, there were probably opportunities to get the ball away, I think, and sort of it was like sort of a second phase, wasn't it, from a corner. We probably should have got the ball away there again. Mistakes again. So at the other end of the field, when we have our opportunities, Jack Clark in the 4th minute, it was a decent chance, a well-worked chance. We don't take our opportunities, unfortunately. But I think, we didn't really deserve too much more from that today. Second half, 2-0 down. We didn't really test them enough, did we? We didn't. Jordan Pickford, you can't really remember any saves he made. I think our first shot on target was like the 78th minute, something like that. So yes, I think we're kind of learning the level, and that sides that are even sides that are around us, like Everton, who, although if you look through Everton's squad, it's a squad that probably should be higher in the division than it is at the moment. But even we face the teams around us, and they're, we've got to be on our game and hope that they have a bit of an off day, really, for us to get a result against them at the moment. And today, we were the ones having a bit of an off day. And
I think, we did see excellent pressing against Liverpool in the first half. We had excellent press at times and energy against Aston Villa, which was a really heartening display. But that just wasn't there today, and as you said, that just means that you're not going to be at the races against the kind of quality of squad that Everton brought. We spoke to Alan E earlier, and we were playing that after this segment, and Alan's view, he just didn't feel the goal was coming in the second half.
No.
And we just weren't at the races, and the threat wasn't there. Delap was isolated again a little bit. Kallum, let's go on to yourself. I just wanted, before you maybe take us into the team selection, let's talk about the atmosphere. Interestingly, I can't remember a game being delayed. The game was delayed by 15 minutes because of turnstile issues, I think. Can anyone remember that before? Can you remember?
Not for that reason.
No.
I can remember games being delayed for traffic problems, things like that.
Yeah.
But
I think traffic delays, but nothing like that. But
I don't think it's a big story.
No.
It makes no difference. Really.
Well, picking up on that point, let's talk about the atmosphere, Kallum, because I think, again, Kallum, McKenna is asking for atmosphere and from the players, from the fans, to push the players forward. It was quite flat today, but was that as a result of the players not bringing enough energy? What was your thoughts on the atmosphere?
Quite possibly. I thought it was a pretty flat atmosphere throughout, but like you say, you've got to have something to feed off, and there wasn't any of that today. I thought we were not even outclassed across the pitch. I just thought the differences in both boxes and the gulf between the promoted sides and those that are established. I think there is a clear gulf. You've seen the national media have this narrative about, is the gap getting bigger, which I know a lot of people have taken issue to. They're dead right. For me, there's a gap that's clearly there.
And I think
I think today we saw that ourselves. I think, but
I think I think what I worry is that it's a bit of a maudlin show. The disappointment is that gap is there, so we've got to be on our very best. And then when we don't turn up with some of those attributes you need, you're going to get found out by the quality. Phil, to you.
You were saying, just before we move over, you were saying about Jack Clarke's chance in the first 4 or 5 minutes. One of it is about taking your chances. Yeah, that's exactly the point. Yeah, we've got to be scoring those chances.
And because that was, I think that could have turned the game. Back to you, Phil, and maybe Phil, talking about the game, we can bring in the VAR decision, which I know has been an important part of the press conference as well. I think discussion.
Yeah. I was sort of coming back to sort of what you were saying there. But what Kieran would say is that over the course of the season, as the new players are settled into the squad and the team and the way that he wants to play, and that the players that have come up settle into the level more, then perhaps we'll be more competitive. I think we look at we're a bit down today, but we've had 8 games. The first 6, I think we've said we've been able to take something positive from all 6 of those games. It's the last 2 where perhaps we've kind of looked at them with there's been greater concerns. But yes, the VAR, which another thing to take from the Premier League. I mean, it's very difficult for me to judge because all the video, the replays went down in the press area, so I've literally only seen it in real time. And your immediate thought was, "Oh, that looks a penalty," and obviously the referee thought that. Michael Oliver. Kieran says he was very annoyed because he felt that all the directives they've been given are that it has to be a kind of clear and obvious error in order for a decision to be overturned, and that it wasn't, and that the conversation he had with Michael Oliver kind of, the way that he spoke about it, felt that he saw it in the same way, that it was Dwight O'Neill kind of put his leg across the line that Jack Clarke was running in on, and as Jack Clarke was about to shoot, and Jack Clarke ended up on the ground. Now, I mean, it's one of those, Kieran said this, it's one of those where Sean Dyche will feel it wasn't a penalty, he will feel it was a penalty. The referee in real time thought it was a penalty. VAR obviously felt differently, but as one of the journalists said to ask Kieran, should referees be strong in those circumstances and take their own opinion rather than what's in their ear? And Kieran agreed with that, and I think it's right. Referees have got to referee the game rather than have VAR refereeing it for them. And I think I'm sure most people will. Kieran said he was still convinced it was a penalty.
I mean, let's pass it back to you, Kallum.
I was surprised by that reaction. it's a game of opinions, obviously, but for me, I thought the correct decision. For me, it wasn't a penalty.
Yeah, I think around me,
the
leg was already in position, and then he strikes the leg. I think your point is the VAR obvious decision. So
I think he's already on the deck. I think he's kicked the back of McNeil's leg.
I think the Clark chance was probably a bigger factor, maybe. You know, that if that had gone in, I think we could have said. Let's quickly look at the team selection, because obviously some big surprises at the back line today. Just quickly summarise the team selection today, and then we can pick out some performances.
Hit by injury, by the sounds of things. Jacob Greaves obviously missed out, so Cam Burgess came in for what was his Premier League debut, and he was alongside Luke Wolfenden, the band back together, the two that got us up, with Darragh O'Shea over at right back, because Ben Johnson missed out.
With an injury.
With an injury, he wasn't in the squad. So, there's a bit of familiarity with the two central defenders, so they were kind of the key changes, but another thing you like mentioning is the speed in transition.
Yeah,
I thought on the ball there was a lack of urgency.
Can I come in there and feel on the performances? It was noticeable how slow the movement across the centre backs and then out to the right was, and I think that's why Harry Clark came in. But maybe we lost some of that with Greaves not in there. But we were slow in transition today. You know, Everton were quicker when they came out wide, weren't they? Go through more of the selection today. Again, on the forums this week, the big discussion is around those attacking midfield three, isn't it? Talk us through who played today and how did you think they were today?
It was the same three that was at the West Ham game. So Wes Burns was on the right, Amari Hutchinson in the middle, and Jack Clark on the left. Jack Clark, I think there's a lot of desire for him to want to play, which is fine. I thought he was probably the one attacker that had the right intentions and wanted to get things going, but it just felt like Everton was so structured and so organised, particularly once they'd gone in front, that it was difficult for him to get his way through. He was dealing in a very crowded, congested area of the pitch. Amari through the middle, I know there's a lot of talk about whether he
that's
might
the other
be more
big
useful on the
conversation
right.
is he should be in right, and actually
it was Wes on the right, and again, I'm not sure he's been brilliant this season. Again, I didn't think he offered an awful lot today. I'd like to see Chio Ogbene play on the right instead. It feels like he hasn't played for a while, in a Town shirt anyway, behind obviously Liam Delap, who didn't get as much service as I'm sure he'd have wanted. He did have that shot in the second half over the bar, but again, slim pickings for him, slightly ace. Phil, your thoughts on performances across the players, please?
Yeah, well, some of us have been sort of discussing, some of the journalists have been discussing who would be man of the match, and it's a very difficult one to pick today. I think kind of maybe outfield, Hutchinson, as you say, had probably more impact from an attacking perspective when he moved to the right in the latter stages, but at that point I think Everton were happy with where they were and were sitting back. I think we had Cameron Burgess as an emergency centre forward for a while during that sort of period, didn't we? And we didn't really, I mean, as you say, Liam Delap had a shot over, and there was a probably the best opportunity was that corner, wasn't it, where Leif Davis played it to Connor Chaplin, and to play their traditional corner, but he hit it into the ground a bit. But Muric, someone suggested Muric as man of the match, who made a number of saves, but again, you didn't feel entirely convinced with him on the ground, and there was one incident where he kind of needlessly put the ball out of play, and there actually the corner from which one of the goals came from, I think there was a bit of miscommunication between him and Burgess, because I think Muric probably would have caught the ball, so whether there was a call or not I don't know, but yes, very difficult game to pick man of the match.
It was fun. There were a couple of, and we talked about this earlier, didn't we, Kallum, is that there were a couple of times where there was the Muric error. I think there was a ball out to Davis that was above him, and the atmosphere dropped again, didn't it? We were trying to get some momentum, and then you make mistakes like that, and Portman Road goes a bit flat, and it was important. There
were a lot of things like that. There was the early incident when Phillips stabbed the ball back to Wolfenden and put Calvert-Lewin through on goal. There was another one where there was I can't remember who the two players were, but we had a corner, didn't we? And it kind of was between two players, and we allowed Everton to have a break from there. There was a lot of that today, which is very Ipswich under McKenna.
It was un-McKenna, wasn't it? I think we're all agreeing that that's probably the loosest, disjointed performance we've seen in McKenna,
particularly here at home. There's been a few poor performances away, but I think at home,
there was Leeds last year. Obviously, had West Ham last week. I think it builds on the West Ham performance as well, doesn't it? Just picking up on the stats, actually, Phil, is we actually got more possession, because that's Dyche, isn't it? That's Sean Dyche's Everton. They dropped quite. Although we had 55% possession, they had 45 shots. We actually had 13. Yeah, they had 11, but we only had 2 on target, and they had 8. And actually, they had some really good chances.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, Muric, as you said, was probably up there.
Yeah. And Calvert-Lewin could have had a hat trick, couldn't he? He's 2 on goal, header that he probably should have scored.
So just moving forward, I think we talked in the week about what are the kind of factors that are going to make us perhaps survive and have success in the Premier League. And we sort of talked about winning the duels. And actually, I thought we were better in the duels today than we were at West Ham, but still lacked some of that aggression, didn't we, if you know what I mean? So I don't think overall we won that factor in terms of winning the duels. Is that your view as well?
Yeah, and I think winning the duels, but and also kind of unforced errors, do you know what I mean, as well? I think that was kind of that's probably where we're falling down at the moment.
Yeah.
You can win battles, can't you?
Yeah.
But
well, again, the other thing we've got to do is reduce the errors, and Burns made the error in the penalty box, and that led to a goal because you're going to get punished. I thought what did you think, Kallum, of the press today? You know, it wasn't there. The energetic press, I think, is another thing we need. I just didn't see it.
No, I didn't see it. I mean, you mentioned the possession stats. We had more of the ball, so we had maybe less opportunities to press.
Yeah.
It was more us trying to get through.
Yes, that's a good point.
Their kind of structured back four and sort of flank of midfield 5, really, that we were trying to get through, which is always going to be difficult. It's the way Everton play. We know that they were structured, and once they went in front, particularly once they went 2-0 up, for me, we never looked like scoring.
Yeah, and I think the other attribute, guys, is that speed of transition.
Yep.
You know, you've got to kind of, at this league, you've got to be able to move the ball quickly through the areas of the pitch, and I thought we were slow. I mean,
it's one touch too many.
I mean, it got
Every
better
time.
when Harry Clark came on, didn't it? Do you think and Hutchinson went right?
Yeah.
But we were just so slow, and Everton are so good at getting into a very tight shape that we had no speed in transition. And then the last one, obviously, taking the chances, and you come back to Jack Clark's chance. You've got to take it, haven't you? I think. Okay. Just looking to start to close out. Anything else in the press conferences? I mean, it's quite a long one, wasn't it, Phil? Anything else you want to pick from that?
It was a lot of it was the penalty incident, and Greaves' injury, which obviously is going to be a bit of a blow. A few weeks, I think, is kind of where it's at. Hamstring that he suffered at West Ham. Ben Johnson, he said that the injury, which he didn't specify, they're still assessing, but it's been kind of a week or so at least. So, so we're a bit short of players, aren't we, in some areas? Other than that, in the press conference, I think he said that he didn't think Everton showed much different than he anticipated. And I think he's still trying to play down the significance of not having won a game. But the longer that goes on, the more.
I think that's we talked about the message boards have been talking a lot about the attacking 3, as you said, Kallum. The other thing is that first win and what we're going to get over these 3 games, Kallum. Today was Everton at home, then we've got Brentford away, difficult, and then we've got Leicester at home. And for me, we've got to get a win out of these 3.
Yeah, you've got to. I mean, already, I know, as we sit here now, we're still out of the bottom 3. But I mean, there's already a 4-point gap above us.
Yeah.
And within the 4 that are down there are Crystal Palace and Wolves, which we talk about the gulf between the established sides. For me, I still think they're better sides than us.
They're in the wrong position because of some of the quality of their players.
We can't afford to go into that Spurs game and then therefore the break, assuming we don't get anything from Spurs, without the win. Otherwise, you're completely playing too much catch up.
Okay, just back to you, Phil. I'll just give you an update on the sort of survival league. So there weren't many games of the teams around us. Unbelievable game down at St Mary's where Saints threw away a 2-0.
All predictable game at St Mary's.
Yeah. So they've given away a 2-0 lead, I think, wasn't it? They've lost 3-2 to one of our other rivals, Leicester.
As they do every week.
And because of that, we stayed in 17th. So we're still not in the relegation zone. Let's try and take some positives, guys. I know it's hard.
Stop the count.
Stop the count. And then tomorrow, Wolves have got Man City at home, so that's going to be a challenge for them. And then Monday's a big game, Forest v Palace. And in some ways we're rooting for Forest in that one, aren't we? Would you say?
Certainly, yeah. I do agree with Kallum that Palace obviously finished last season like a house on fire, and this year have just not started at all. And there's already talks about other managers coming in and that kind of thing, which is probably a good thing for us, really. And suggestions in the press room today saying, well, that must be like Russell Martin's last hurrah.
Well,
because
exactly.
they keep losing in the same manner.
There's going to be change soon,
and
Wolves, this time. Yeah,
Wolves as well, if they don't get, you can see that being a club that panics, and I think that can work either way. Obviously, you can bring in a manager who does fantastically and turns its season around, or you can bring in someone who's even more of a disaster, and things go ever more wrong. So we have to hope for those things. But I think it's a long way to go, and as Kieran has kind of said on a number of occasions, and that we are a kind of work in progress, and that we will get better as the season goes on. So I think the overall mood is today has not been a great day, but overall there's a long way to go.
This is McKenna's first real test, isn't it? This is now for him. Brentford next week. Can he pull something out of the bag? We are beginning to get injury. I think Axel and Greaves, their misses, it would have made a factor. Conscious of time, guys. We like to look on the forum at the 3 words from the forum from Homer to summarise the game. Feels rather bleak. That's kind of how I feel at the moment, to be perfectly honest. Not good enough. I think that's probably really a fair on the performance. The Great Escape. And I think that's kind of like it's going to be, and we've got to start to hopefully McKenna can bring out one of these performances. We can get that win and we can turn it around. But it's still early days. I mean, as McKenna said clearly in the week, it's early days. There's a long way to go. And last one I think is important, own worst enemy. We talked about those attributes of we've got to cut the errors out.
Too many mistakes. There you go. Those are my 3 words.
There are too many mistakes. Okay. Well, listen, thanks so much for tuning in again. We look forward to returning away at Brentford next week for another TWTV video verdict, where we'll hopefully have a slightly better game and performance to look forward to. So thanks again, appreciate you tuning in, and please like and subscribe.